Before I start off, let me give you guys some background. I was originally planning this trip for 2020, but if you remember what happened in 2020, the world had other plans. Unfortunately, this led to me forgetting about wanting to go to Japan, at least until 2023. During this time, I've been watching a lot of Japan-related content like Abroad in Japan on YouTube, and at one point or another, my desire to go to Japan was rekindled, and like that, I'd started planning my trip for March of 2024. But I didn't want this to feel like some normal trip. I wanted to go all out, so I decided that I wanted to go for a whole month. And like that, I booked my plane tickets and my hotels, and as soon as I knew it, I was on my way to Japan. And now finally, after all this time, I was finally able to start my trip with After landing and getting a good night's rest, I knew exactly what the first thing I wanted to do was. You see, I really like Pokemon, and there actually just so happened to be a Pokemon Center really close to where I was staying in Nihonbashi. In fact, I actually went to multiple Pokemon Centers throughout my trip here, but to keep things concise, I'm just going to talk about them all right here. In fact, that's probably for the best, because there was way more Pokemon stuff in these stores than I could ever dream of. Each one of them had their own statue that made them feel sort of monumental in a way. They're all covered in Pokemon merchandise. In fact, the one I went to first in Nihonbashi had an entire wall of Pokemon plushies. They also had this entire wall diorama thing that showcased the entire history of Pokemon. It was all so cool. In all sincerity though, I loved every single thing these stores had to offer. They really brought me back to when I was a kid, when the only thing I really had to worry about was a Pikachu staying in a Pokeball. Unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. And after looking at Pokemon plushies for probably a bit too long, I decided to continue my week and I went to Ueno Park. And right off the bat, this place was beautiful. The water was clear, the skies were blue, there was no trash anywhere. It was all just so beautiful and peaceful. I also stumbled across this festival, and it was here where I got to check out some really cool temples and eat some amazing food. Also, this place held the best part of the trip. And that is the monkey. This little guy was amazing. I only got to take like a picture, but this guy was awesome. He was so cool. He did some really cool tricks. I think he was dressed up as like the main character of Demon Slayer. I don't know, I only watched the first season. Unfortunately, I only got this screenshot and maybe a video, and it was overall just a really cute and fun performance, and it definitely made my day a lot better seeing that. Unfortunately, just like Pokemon, Monkey had to come to an end. I'm not saying he died, but I had to leave. It was from there that I then decided that I wanted to go to Shibuya next. So, a couple of days later, I hopped on a train, and lo and behold, I was in the most massive city that I could ever imagine. So in the place I'm from, the closest city is Milwaukee, which in itself is a pretty big place. There's really big buildings, there's a decent amount of people, but the size of Milwaukee does not compare in the slightest to Shibuya. The buildings feel bigger, there's billboards everywhere, the amount of people is suffocating. In fact, there was so many people that I didn't even realize I was at the famous Shibuya crossing until I went through it twice. Although to be fair, I was kind of distracted by this weird caricature of Trump that was there. I honestly have no idea why they're there. I tried looking up and I couldn't find anything. If someone could tell me, please let me know. I am very confused. Other than that, the only things I really did here that I would want to note for the video were going to the Nintendo and Shonen Jump stores, which pretty much just gave me the same childlike whimsy that I explained with the Pokemon Centers. And with that, my first week in Japan was over, and it was time for me to start So my original plan for starting week 2 was to go to the Tokyo Skytree, but I actually heard that the Metropolitan Government Building had a much better view, so I went there instead. Now, despite the line being pretty long, I really enjoyed my time here. Being able to get this breathtaking view of Tokyo was a very special experience, and despite the fact that I can't really say too much about it, it was a really big highlight of my trip. The view really was just that beautiful, and honestly, part of me didn't really want to leave. Fortunately, the line to leave was also very long, so I could at least bide my time. Once I finally got back onto solid ground, I spent the rest of my time in Shinjuku just walking around and eating some food. And eventually, I did end up heading on over to the Skytree, although the reasoning for going was a bit different than going to the Skytree itself. So I'm sure you've all heard of the pink round blob known as Kirby. Well, as it turns out, there's a Kirby cafe in an area at the base of the Skytree. When I saw this before I started my trip, I instantly went to try and get a reservation, but unfortunately, I failed. I'll be honest with you, I was crushed. I couldn't tell you just how badly I wanted to go and eat all of their Kirby-themed items, and maybe even get a gift for my girlfriend who loves Kirby, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be. At least that's what I thought until I got back home from Shinjuku and decided to check the reservation site on a whim. And wouldn't you know it, there was a reservation open for the very next day. And now that I knew what I was going to do the next day, I went to sleep and I woke up, ready to go to the Kirby Cafe. However, my reservation wasn't until later in the day, so when I got to the Skytree, I just spent a good while walking around. This is when I checked out the Pokemon Center that I shot off before. And also, I bought a couple things from the Shonen Jump store. Look, I know it looks like a lot, but the Shibuya store only really had Jujutsu Kaisen related stuff, and it didn't even look that cool. So I got stuff here, okay? Meanwhile, this store had a lot of really cool stuff from a lot of the shows and manga that I like. I mean, they had stuff from JoJo's, One Piece, Dragon Ball, Hunter x Hunter. I mean, look at these cool ass replicas of Gojo's glasses. How could I not buy them? Just like the Pokemon centers, being surrounded by the stuff I love made me feel like I was in heaven. But then while I was checking out, I realized it was time for me to experience something that would end up blowing this feeling out of the water. It was time for the Kirby Cafe. From the moment I walked in, this place was absolutely magical. My experience started with me taking a picture with Kirby and Waddle Dee themselves. I was then sat down by my waiter, who was very kind throughout my entire time here. I handed him a card that I made to help translate the fact that I was allergic to a lot of nuts, and he responded with, "All of this?" After I nodded to confirm my beta status, he quickly started looking between the restaurant's allergen list and the menu to let me know what I could eat without, dying. Once he was done, I made my choice, and I started waiting for my food. While I waited, I got the chance to look around, and I got to see just how Kirby everything was. I mean, there was Kirby on the walls, there was Kirby on the utensils, there was Kirby on the coasters, there was even this giant statue of Wispy Woods in the middle of the cafe. It was clear that the people that worked on this place had the same amount of passion and love for Kirby as the fans did, and they did an amazing job. And after waiting a little bit longer, admiring their work, I got my food. I got the Kirby burger and pasta dish, and I don't really know why they put a burger and pasta on the same dish together, but honestly, both were really good, so I can't complain. I also really liked the size of the dish came with, and thought that everything was really well prepared. For dessert, I got this orange drink and also ate Waddle Dee's ass. I have a huge sweet tooth, and neither of these items disappointed me. The cream was really rich, and it went well with the orange, which was really sweet. After I paid, I went to check out the Kirby Cafe store that's exclusive to people that got reservations, and I of course had to buy gifts for my previously mentioned Kirby obsessed girlfriend, in which I then went to the public Kirby Cafe store and bought more gifts. I am now broke. Now, despite my bank account being quite a bit smaller than it was before, I ended this week by doing some typical touristy stuff. I went to Asakusa to see Sensoji Temple, which was pretty cool if you don't include the fact that everybody there was packed in like sardines, and it was almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I also went to the Uno Museum of Science and Nature, as well as the Sumida Aquarium. Neither of these places were all too different than their US counterparts, but honestly, both were a great experience to walk through, and they were a great way to end my second week here. In fact, everything I experienced here felt like a dream come true. Not a day went past where I didn't feel absolutely grateful for the people in my life that made this trip possible. And to think, at this point I was only halfway done with my trip, and there was a lot more fun to be had in weeks 3 and 4. But for now, that's all I got for you. I'm going to thank you for watching, and if I could take a bit more of your time, I'm going to thank each and every one of you that supported me in my last video. When I originally uploaded that video, I didn't really expect it to do anything really. I originally just wanted it to be kind of a way to tell myself to get going, to act as sort of a starting point. But even with that, I don't think it would have worked without the people that supported me and told me that they were rooting for me. So given all that, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for supporting me. And with that said, again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. See ya.